Can you people hear me? Good, okay. Go. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. This is a very special evening. We have some important decisions to make in the near future. We believe that our elections are the most important thing. Basically, our children are the most important thing. Things our school boards are most important. All these things are most important, but they're all regulated by elections. If our elections are corrupt, how do we win? So we're very honored today to have Patrick Colbeck with us, and he's going to talk to you about this, and I think he's going to answer questions. So I'd like to introduce to you Patrick Colbeck. Also, when he's done, he's got books back there too. But Patrick, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Am I supposed to be talking into both of these?
No. You have one. I'm sorry,
I
got to do that.
Like, I don't know if I can. I'm spinning enough plates as it is right now, so I think this is for the PA for this, right? All right, guys. Well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And I thought you framed it very well here because literally, I don't know what your passionate issue is regarding being Republicans and being part of the Republican Party or just being conservatives and tired of what's going on with our country. But your voice is your vote. And if they're screwing around with the integrity of our elections, you've lost your voice. And they're picking and they're selecting who your candidates are going to be instead of you picking them. And that's why you get a lot of these politicians that are just talk to the hand. They don't care what you have to say because they're already going off and doing what the heck they want because they know how they're getting elected into office or selected into office. So that's why this is so passionate for me. Trust me, there's so many other things I'd rather be doing with my life than looking into elections. This is like, you guys, for those who don't know my background, I really wanted to get back into aerospace engineering. I wanted to get into fixing the healthcare system. There's a lot of cool things I wanted to go off and do, but none of it matters a hill of beans until we fix this first. So and we're still at it, and I'll tell you, it's been a long road. Not just the last 5 years since 2020, but even before that, when I was in the Michigan Senate. For those of you who don't know, I was actually vice chair of the Senate Elections and Government Reform Committee, and I tried to get Catherine Engelbrecht in to speak before our committee and talk about all the problems we were having with our election system, because you may recall Jill Stein calling for that recount back in 2017 in the wake of the 2016 election. Remember that? Yeah. Well, one of my staffers, Penny Kreider, and her husband were out in Detroit at the recount. And they were at the precinct where there were 306 votes according to the poll book, but only 50 ballots in the container. And so obviously some ballots were more interesting than other ballots because they got run through a few more times. And so I called for an investigation, asked the Attorney General to investigate, and the Attorney General said, I'm not going to dig into it, but Ruth Johnson did. With the data she had available to her, and it was just a data mining exercise because she didn't have the ability to go off and subpoena any of the records or anything. And she found 31 counts of voter fraud, and not one of them was prosecuted. So, and that meeting that I was hoping to get in our Senate Elections Committee was not allowed because I was running for governor, and Senator Arlen Meekhoff, who was the Senate Majority Leader, said, do not give Colbeck a platform to talk about the elections to the chair of our committee, Senator Dave Robertson. So we had an opportunity to fix the elections back then. I had Catherine all lined up and ready to go. I've known her for quite a few years, and unfortunately that didn't happen then. So this has been going on for a while. And how many of you guys have seen my process flow diagram that I developed when I was in the Senate? All right, so I mapped out all the election processes because I'm a geek, and that's what geeks do. As an engineer, I wanted to map it all out, so whenever we had a bill, I could have a good understanding of how that bill would impact that flow. Would it increase the likelihood of fraud or decrease it? And so that's actually helped me, I think, over the last 5 years to go off and isolate where we needed to go off and look, where the key concerns were, and what we need to go off and drill down into. So anyway, the Senate experience, I think, has helped me overall in that context. So, but tonight, I really want to focus in on a lot of your questions. I want to understand what your concerns are, because literally I could go in so many different directions and talk about all kinds of different topics, because I'm not just working here in Michigan. I'm working across the country with Mike Lindell. A couple of years ago, he hired me as his chief operating officer for Lindell Management, which was a total blessing, because prior to that, for like 3 years, my wife and I literally had no idea where our next paycheck was going to be coming from. And that I am here to tell you that where God guides, He provides. And I honestly don't know how we kept the lights on, but we kept the lights on, and that's the way He works. And it's deepened my faith even more. So if you're wondering why I'm still pounding my head against the wall in this whole election integrity thing, is because I feel like I'm called to go off and do this. And when people are spouting a bunch of stuff that's not true, I feel like it's my duty to go off and call them out on it. And it's not fun. It's not fun. It's a lot easier to just kind of go with the flow. But anyway, so I'm going to go over a few things. First of all, I want to get a quick little survey to kind of take the temperature of the room. How many in this room believe that the 2020 election was the most secure election in American history? All right. How about 2024? All right. And well, yeah. And how do you think we're situated for 26? Yeah. I also got a question for you. How many think it's no problem using electronic voting systems? As long as you go off and secure them correctly, everything will be fine. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I got the temperature of the room. All right. That's good. And guys, I'm telling you, when I came in as a certified poll challenger in 2020 at the TCS Center, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I assumed that because I knew all the different laws, I knew all the processes, I go, as long as I had an opportunity to go off and correct them and let them know what they were doing wrong at the TCS Center, they would correct it, and then we'd get the election right, rowing in the same direction, right? Okay, I'm a little bit, I told somebody else this earlier, I'm a half-full glass type of guy, generally, and so I just assumed the best in everybody, and I found out that that doesn't work when you're dealing with an organized crime syndicate, and that's what I've come to believe is really happening. And unfortunately, there's R's next to some of the folks in that syndicate as well as D's, and we got to muddle through that, unfortunately. Let's see here. I actually wrote down some notes I can't read them, but I wrote down some notes. And I just want to start off, with why I'm still passionate about this and why I'm zeroing in on this election fraud, and just give you a summary of what I believe are some of the most damning pieces of evidence that we have in the hopper right now, particularly around 2020. And by the way, I'm in that school of thought that says unless we address what happened in 2020, you're never going to have a secure election. And the reason I focus in on 2020 is because we have so much freaking data and so much freaking evidence on that if we can't get justice for 2020, we're not going to get justice for any of the other elections either. And a lot of that's due to this lead clapper here, Tim Vetter. His efforts with DEEP and prior to that with Check My Vote. Guys, I often call all the people that have come together on this election fraud front meddling kids. And how many people know what that is in reference to? Scooby-Doo, guys. At the end of every Scooby-Doo where they caught the villain they'd pull the mask off the villain, and the villain would say, and I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids. So, and the thing about this is that the Mystery Machine kids, it wasn't their job to do this. They were not law enforcement, right? They were doing this because they were in the wrong place at the right time, which is kind of where I was at the TCS Center. And so we're still at it, and we're doing it because of meddling kids like Tim Vetter and many of the other folks, Jeff with Michigan Fair Elections. there's a lot of folks who've been working their tail off on this for quite some time. And so one of the most damning pieces of evidence, and this number has changed from month to month, and frankly it shouldn't change at all, but it deals with a key metric in our elections, and that is the number of voters on the list of people who voted and the number of ballots cast. So the number of ballots cast in the 2020 election was 5,579,317 ballots. That's according to good old Jocelyn Benson's official numbers, and of course Jocelyn never lies. So and then when you actually look at the qualified voter file, however, according to statute MCL 168.509Q, and it's so sad that I not only know that MCL reference, but that I know the number of ballots by exactly in the 2020 election. I've been at this for too long. But the number of, the list of voters is 499,850 people short of the number of ballots, according to analysis that Tim, he gets these QBF records every single month from the Secretary of State. And that number should never change after an election certified, and it's changed every single month since the 2020 election. And why are they deleting it? Well, there's no good reason for it to be deleted or modified. There's a lot of bad reasons, and it ties into another fact that Jocelyn Benson orders the clerks to destroy election records within 7 days of the certification of the vote after every election. And when she does that, she eliminates the audit trail for the poll books, which are documenting at the local level who voted. So now you have to trust what the state is saying as far as who voted, and you have no access to the local data that tells who voted. And why is this important? Because what are the chances that you go off and after you've done some great canvassing like Jackie Eubanks did back in 2020 with a group of folks out in Chesterfield Township, and she found a 17.6% anomaly rate on the voter history data that was provided by the state in Macomb County. That means that, and we sat down, by the way, with Tony Ferlini after the election. He was a newly minted clerk. It was with Mark, with Lisa, and with Jackie Eubanks. Jackie started giving him a list of the people that we found that had anomalies, gave him name number one. He looked it up in the Macomb County records, and sure enough, that person never should have gotten a ballot, but yet they were listed as somebody who voted. And I looked up name number two, same thing. Got to name number three, and all of a sudden the internet connection in the Macomb County Clerk's office went down and we couldn't check anymore. But Tony was going to be sure to get back to us on the rest of those. So guys, the fact, this voter history data, I know everybody right now is so fixated on cleaning up the voter rolls. I mean, that's all everybody's talking about. But to be honest with you, I don't care. I care a little bit, so don't say, this is still important to me. I want everything to be of integrity. But if I had 1 million listings of Elvis Presley or Mickey Mouse in the voter registration file, I really don't care until I find out that Mickey Mouse got 1 million ballots to go off and cast in the election. You know what I mean? So I'm concerned about who is allowing these people to vote in the election if they're not eligible to vote. That's the key. That's the Rosetta Stone of fraud. So Tim Vetter has been on this for a while. This 499,850 fewer voters than ballots cast is key. I mean, they're highlighting it's a big deal in Fulton County right now, and that gave them the FBI the chutzpah to go in and conduct a search warrant because they found out that there's 22,534 more or fewer voters than ballots cast there. That's just 22,000, right? Now, their margin of victory was 11,000. Ours was 154,188 here. But that was just one county in Georgia. So this is a repeated pattern across the board. It's not just Michigan. It's not just Georgia. The Rosetta Stone of fraud comes in on this voter history data. And Tim, to your credit, you've been on that since frickin' day one, like white on rice, and I appreciate your work there. So that's one of the most damning pieces. The other thing is our own Secretary of State's been found in violation of law. She's been found to have issued unlawful directives to election officials by 7 separate courts. 7 separate courts. Wow. So how can you trust any of the elections conducted under her watch if you know that she's conducting unlawful elections? And one of those cases was the O'Halloran v. Benson. How many of you guys know that? That was around poll challenger instructions. And now she's got it, her friends in the Democratic Party have gone off and set it up so that she no longer, I don't know what I said, but anyway. So the, anyway, so in poll challenger guidelines, essentially they were making it unlawful to go off and oversee elections and actually challenge them. And right now it's to the point, unfortunately, with the laws that have been passed, that it's pretty much, they're making it illegal to go off and be a poll challenger because they've given the poll workers the authority to go off and give a one-sided jury and say, that poll challenger's intimidating me, and the first time he says it, it's a misdemeanor, second time it's a misdemeanor, third time it's a felony. And I don't know if they knew this or not, but the word challenger is kind of in the name. And so you may feel a little threatened if somebody's coming in and challenging the way you're conducting the election. And so they're just teeing it up so that one of those seven, actually two of those court rulings dealt specifically with O'Halloran v. Benson and a poll challenger. And so when she ended up, getting her clock cleaned in the Michigan Court of Claims, she lost in O'Halloran v. Benson there. She lost 3-0 in the Court of Appeals in O'Halloran v. Benson. And by the way, during that testimony, her own lawyer, Heather Meingast, said that Jocelyn Benson only follows the laws that she agrees with, and if you don't like that, you can sue her. Literally, she said that. I've got that. You go up to my Rumble channel, you can go off and watch her say this. So that's another reason I'm not too comfortable with the integrity of our elections under Jocelyn Benson's watch. Let's see, there's a few others. What's the other thing? And by the way, when she lost in the Court of Appeals, guess what she did? She appealed it to the Michigan Supreme Court, and when she appealed it to the Michigan Supreme Court, it went before her friends in the Michigan Supreme Court, including Justice Kyra H. Bolden. And while she was a defendant before the Michigan Supreme Court, she issued an $82,500 contribution to Justice Kyra H. Bolden, who later ended up writing the majority opinion in favor of Benson, overturning previously unanimous decisions. So walks like a bribe, talks like a bribe. I think it's a bribe. So having said that, I issued a complaint to the Attorney Grievance Commission for Benson to take away her law license because that's unethical behavior. They said nothing to see here. Judicial Tenure Commission did the same thing against Kyra Bolden, said, oh, nope, sorry, nothing to see here. I appealed that to the Michigan Supreme Court. They said, nope, nothing to see here. I have since filed it with our friends out in the Department of Justice, and they have it as criminal complaints. And so if you know who Ed Martin is, he has a copy of that. Ed Martin has a complaint against John Polis, the Dominion CEO, for lying under oath. U.S. Attorney of the Eastern District, Jerome Gorgon, has the one for Jocelyn Benson. So we've gone the criminal complaint route. I can't call for a criminal complaint, so I gave it to my friend, Sheriff Dar Leaf, and they said law enforcement can do it. And I said, okay, Dar, can you do it now? And Dar did it, so he filed all these criminal complaints on my behalf. So we're going after these guys. And here's one more thing to consider. All the people that say the machines aren't the problem, well, you guys remember the Antrim County lawsuit pursued by my late friend, Bill Bailey. So in Bailey versus Antrim County, we actually got discovery during that, got access to the machines in Antrim County and some of the machines outside Antrim County as well. We found ES&S machines with the DS200 machines with modems hidden on the motherboard inside the machine. And this isn't the first time it's happened to ES&S, by the way. I know Dominion gets all the press about being, not so good as far as integrity is concerned. That's why they changed their name to Liberty Vote now. But ES&S has problems too. They were advertising these machines saying that they didn't have modem connectivity, and they did. And Jim Penrose, who's a former NSA executive, was part of the forensic team that accessed one of these ES&S machines, and they found out that embedded on the motherboard of which most clerks, If they're told that they're air gapped, what do they have to do? They have to trust what they're told, because if they pop open the hood on the chassis, they decertify the machine, and then they got to fork out another $12,000 or whatever dollars to go off and get a new machine. But during the discovery, they found out about this, and they discovered that modem that's manufactured in China, and IP addresses went back to Taiwan and another server in Germany, and so there's a lot of evidence. And by the way, I just want to encourage everybody. There's a website that I curate for Mike Lindell. It's called theelectioncrimebureau.com. And if you go to the evidence tab there, go to the analysis tab, that's all material that I've been curating for Mike. So if you run into anybody that says there is no evidence of election fraud, start there, because there's court affidavits up there. There's sworn testimony from whistleblowers. As much as I appreciate the materials that I put in my book, The 2020 Coup, I'm an outsider looking in. What's happened since I wrote that book is that there are insiders that are coming forward that know how they're stealing the elections from the inside, from Venezuela, folks from Serbia, and elsewhere. All the stuff that Sidney Powell was talking about before, that she was called a conspiracy theorist and she was sanctioned and penalized, guess what? Same thing with Mike. All the stuff that Mike was saying, true. And he's facing all these lawfare against him as a result of it. And I'll tell you, he's like the weeble that wobbles but won't fall down on all this stuff. That's why I love the guy. But so we're still plugging away on all that. But if they say that there is no evidence of fraud, just start them out on that page. And I've literally, I've got a 2 terabyte hard drive that I've collected of evidence from all over the country, pretty much every single state. And the folks up in D.C. and the Department of Justice have access to it. The president and his counsel have access to it. And suffice it to say, there's a lot of reason for hope. And I'm going to get into that in just a second before I open it up for questions. So having said all that, right, that's a very, very small sampling of all the evidence that we have, and it's specific to Michigan. That's where obviously a lot of my focus has been. But everybody's clamoring for this one word. What's that one word? What do you think it is? Transparency. Accountability. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. The accountants should have thought of that one. Wait a minute. So it's accountability. They want people to go to jail, right? We all want people to go to jail for this, because instead, who's going to jail? Tina Peters for 9 years for doing her job as a clerk. We're going against a criminal syndicate. We literally are. I mean, you look at Tina's trial. I mean, they wouldn't allow the introduction of exculpatory evidence that would say, here's what the duty of a clerk was. And what she did was exactly in line with the duty of a clerk. And she got put in jail to make an example out of her. Same thing with Stephanie Scott here in Michigan, out in Adams Township in Hillsdale County. Jocelyn Benson had her removed as a clerk for asking inconvenient questions around internet connectivity of the machines and around the ballot permutations for the test, the logic and accuracy tests. They don't want people investigating this. And what else has happened? They sanction the people that are going off and supporting those investigators, right? So it's so frustrating. So as much as we want accountability, we had 2 indictments, 2 high-profile indictments that were issued recently. You guys remember James Comey, and you remember Letitia James, right? Yeah. Slam dunk cases. They both, I mean, it was pretty damn straightforward, sorry, excuse my French, that they were guilty of lying, all right? And they should have been prosecuted. Where did the indictments go? They're gone. They're dismissed. Why? Because they went after the prosecutors that were assigned to their case and said that they're not qualified and you can't be tried twice, so gone. So we're dealing with a corrupt judiciary. Judge Timothy Kenny out in Wayne County Circuit, he's now retired, but he had it set up as chief judge that all the election cases got routed to him. He never allowed discovery in any of the cases. They're all bench trials. He alone decided whether or not they had merit or not. I remember my testimony, which ticks me off, said that it wasn't credible because prior to the election, I had asserted that they were using COVID to subvert the integrity of the election. and which I was right on, by the way, and we have audio evidence of training being given in the city of Detroit around that 6-foot poll worker rule. Remember that? And the training was from an instructor that was saying, just make sure you back your TV monitor up to within 5 feet of the wall, that way they can't see it. And Judge Kenney dismissed my testimony on the internet connectivity, saying that I can't be trusted because of my pre-election comment. That's the garbage we were dealing with. And by the way, I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. I'm a techie, not to mention, in addition to being a former state legislator. So guys, they were connected to the internet during tabulation out at the TCF Center. And as this whole path unfolds, you'll see why that is more important than even I realized at the time as we go forward on all these discussions. So there's a lot of blockers or a lot of blocks on the whole accountability stage right now that we got to get through. And the judiciary is a big, big issue. The media is another big issue. And then the money laundering, the dollars that went into these NGOs that ended up padding the pockets of the people that are blocking us right now is a big issue. But on the flip side, so back into the glass is half full mode, we've had some successes. So the Doge activities right out of the gate, President Trump went after the money. And everything that he has been doing has been cutting off their money stream. And it's having an impact, all right? So you notice that the ranked choice voting folks had to pull back their ballot initiatives last time. Why? They had to marshal their resources. They were running out of funds because the spigot had been cut off. All right, so it's having an effect, and hopefully it'll have an effect down ballot. But NGOs are getting their funding cut off because of Doge. They're identifying all the fraud now. We're seeing what's going on in Minnesota. Guess what? Minnesota is not the only state, right? We've got Harmeet Dillon has been filing DOJ lawsuits against HAVA. And by the way, this is where Michigan Fair Elections did one of the most brilliant analyses on HAVA compliance that I've seen, and NVRA compliance for that matter as well. In statute, when the Help America Vote Act was passed, they required an audit of the yeah, and because you're getting money, there's grant money, and there's conditions associated with that, and so every once in a while they're going to do an audit saying, did you comply with the conditions of your receipt of that grant? And so it's usually perfunctory, and EAC goes off, does this little audit thing, but it's open to other inputs into that audit process. And who was the whiz that was leading that from Michigan Fair Elections? Because they were an auditor in their background, and they put together, yeah, Mark, was it?
Mark
Vaith, yeah. It was the most professional response here. It makes me so proud of our meddling kids across the board that they responded to it and added their testimony to that audit report and just kind of blasted holes in it and highlighted all the hypocrisy of what we're getting and how, frankly, the state of Michigan should have been given money back to the federal government, and federal government should be giving it back to us because they were not complying with the terms. And now Benson sits there and under those same guidelines, they're required to provide this information to federal authorities upon request, and she's saying talk to the hand, right? So in response to that, the Department of Justice under Harmeet Dillon has filed multiple lawsuits with all these states saying we want to see the voter rolls. And by the way, they don't want to just see the voter rolls. They want to see the voter history data as well. It's listed specifically as one of the items in their letters. And so, and literally, we get that voter history data, and particularly we get something called the QVF transaction log. It is the Rosetta Stone of fraud. More important than anything, our legislators up in Lansing know about this. They got some provisions in the last appropriations bill when they're threatening government shutdown at the state level. And I think there's a possibility we might actually get some access into those records. So that is some good news. And literally, if I had just one piece of election data across the board on all this, it would be the QVF transaction log. That tells me who gave a ballot to somebody, who modified the voter history data, what did they modify, when did they modify it, and what specifically was modified. If I had that information, I know who's stealing our dang elections. And I know a whole bunch of these NGOs that were on the take are getting money that had access to the qualified voter file. And so Rock the Vote, you guys have heard about them, that conservative bastion. I think they're right up there with Turning Point USA on conservatism, right? I'm just kidding, guys, no. They had access into this, and there's different versions of their application program interface that they connected to in the API, but they had read access and then write access into the QVF. That's a third party. Who's monitoring them? Why are these NGOs so dang dangerous? Because they cannot be FOIA'd. I can't find out anything that they're doing. They operate completely behind a curtain of secrecy. Let's see. So the DOJ lawsuits are going good in that context. Although I will say, in addition to the QVF transaction log at the state level, on my wish list of things that I want to see from the federal level is I want to have all the digital data that was collected by the Center for Internet Security during the 2020 election. And for those of you who don't know about this organization, they were contracted by CISA. So don't confuse CIS with CISA, although CIS is a CISA to CIS. No, that's right. All right, anyway. So Center for Internet Security is a non-government organization. I can't issue a FOIA request for them. They are contracted with the federal government to provide ostensibly cybersecurity for our election systems across the country. And they install what are called Albert sensors, which are essentially glorified sniffers. And they are looking at the unencrypted election record transactions from all over the country, all 50 states. So all that data is pulled, centralized into the data centers that are monitored by the CIS. Do you kind of get an idea why I want to see what they're doing? And so even if these guys were on the up and up, and I've got indications that they're not, at least they're being funded by people that are not on the up and up, then it's still a single point of failure that if I were a state actor like China, I'd just focus all my efforts on corrupting that system, because it's the ultimate man-in-the-middle attack for all these machines that they say are not connected to the internet. So that's why they employ a company called Center for Internet Security to secure them. How stupid do they think we are? I mean, really, when you think about it. So, all right, so I'm just going to kind of tee up. If you're looking forward on what to focus in on in the coming days and to give you encouragement and hope, there's going to be 3 basic threads I want you to track. Most recently, and you probably heard that I heard, it was supposed to be on C-SPAN and everything else, that we had 3 of the senior officials from President Trump's administration, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the DHS Director Kristi Noem, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard were all slated to speak at the National Association of Secretaries of State. They canceled at the last second. Don't know why, but there's various theories. Some are really cool theories to ponder. And I'm not going to go into them, and since we're live streaming and we're talking about it, because I think that's what actually happened. But the bottom line is those 3 threads. You pay attention to what's going on with those 3 ladies in addition to what President Trump is saying, and I think you're going to understand where we're headed on this. So, Kristi Noem is Department of Homeland Security. What are they focused in on? Immigration, right? So all the people stealing the elections, all the money laundering associated with that, that's her lane. Pam Bondi, Department of Justice. We just talked about the HAVA lawsuits and filing lawsuits against the state of Michigan and Benson and all those folks. And then you've got Tulsi Gabbard, who I got to admit, I didn't know what to think of her for quite some time here. But I'm liking what I'm seeing right now. So, and I know some folks that are working with her, and it's she's over the target. And you may recall in the cabinet meeting last March, I think it was, she highlighted that these election machines have serious vulnerabilities and never been plugged. Well, she's got a lot more information than that. She was cut short on what she was saying in that meeting. But she obtained the voting machines from Puerto Rico in the 2024 election last year. She has had a team out at the Fulton County, Georgia, looking at the machines out there. She's got a team of forensic experts been looking at that for quite some time already. So her lane is going to be foreign involvement and the machines. So those are kind of the three little lanes to pay attention to as we go forward. And so anyway, we'll see how it all pans out. Here's the sad news a little bit, though. In 2026, nothing's changed in Michigan. It's only gotten worse from my perspective, from an election integrity, which means we've got to flood the zone. The good news is we should have them running scared when they attempt some of these games that they're playing. The bad news is it's more difficult to detect because poll challengers are effectively outlawed, and even when poll challengers are allowed to oversee a process, what have they done? Like in Detroit, they used to have a 5-step process for processing ballots at the AV County Board. Now it's a 4-step process. They moved the one process that had any pay dirt associated with it from an election integrity perspective into the clerk's office, and poll challengers aren't allowed, which should tell you everything you need to know about the fact that they're crooked. But it's important that we just get out and flood the zone in 2026, because literally the only reason Trump won in 24 is because he literally did make it too big to rig. And we got to do the same thing in 2026, or else guess what? They're going to be running impeachment after impeachment after impeachment. One's going to be for him looking cross-eyed at Ilhan Omar. The next one's going to be for him, jaywalking on his way to the White House or something. It's going to be all kinds of bogus charges again. And so we got a road to haul. I've got a good friend of mine that was hired as a special government employee. His name is Kurt Olson. He's a former Navy SEAL. He's a JAG officer. He's working with the president and prosecuting election crimes. It's my understanding that he's one of the instigators behind the Fulton County seizure of ballots. So there are some very good people inside the administration that are moving on this. And if you want another note of encouragement, just please note that President Trump, it wasn't too long, I think it was at the end of January, over the weekend, he finally had enough, because he's, like the rest of us, is anxious to start seeing some orange jumpsuits, right? And so he blasted like 12 different posts on election fraud, election fraud, election fraud, election fraud, just all this stuff that if you know your scripture, it says you can dig, you're going to be pulling out old treasures and making them new, or something to that effect. And it's talking about God's word, but in this context, it's literally all the old evidence that we had from Antrim County, from Detroit, from Muskegon, all that stuff. People are now starting to pay attention because the fake news is being put in their place, and we have alternative communication methods, and people are hearing about this stuff for the first time. And so all the stuff that I have in my book, The 2022, it's even more compelling today than it was back then. I stand by everything that I had in there. But I will, if you only have time to read one book on the elections, don't read my book. And I mean this. There's a book that's come out since then that you need to read, because it puts everything that happened in Venezuela in context, and it's called Stolen Elections by Ralph Pizzulo. And it features so while we're just grasping at straws looking at what we can get from open source intel, they actually recruited insiders that were actually on the fix in the Venezuelan elections, and also telling us how they do it here in the United States with fixing the elections. And it's a page turner. It literally, if they convert that into a movie, it's going to be a bestseller. But it's really good. So it's called Stolen Elections. Ralph Pizzulo. Pizzulo. And it's got testimony from a former CIA station chief, Gary Bernson, and his partner, Martine Rodil. And they literally recruited well over a dozen insiders. And if you go to Mike Lindell's website, that electioncrimebureau.com that I work for him, and you go to evidence, you can see the actual affidavits and the actual letters from these insiders. And they include former head of security for Hugo Chavez. They include the former 3-star, 4-star generals inside the Venezuelan army. include the guy who set up the war room for the Venezuelan election system, a senior election official. These guys are not the the dog catcher in the election process. These are the top head honchos, and they have shown exactly how it's all laid out. And by the way, all that information is corroborated by the data we've been collecting from all these other states. So, all right, with that being said, hopefully you guys have all geared up a whole bunch of questions here, because as much as I was talking about all this stuff, and I could have gone on for a few weeks, but I really want to hear where your head's at with regards to these elections, because there's a lot of craziness going on out there right now.
So what we're going to do, excuse me, just a second, Barb.
Yeah. Just.
So what we're going to do is live stream, so I'm going to bring the mic to you, okay? So who's first?
Just raise your hand.
Barb,
I'll leave it to you.
Barb was the first one, but I interrupted her.
It don't matter. Just let
You have a question?
I do have a question. Thank you so much.
Now that I got the water, the voice won't go out, so don't worry about the order.
Okay. Can you tell us what's really happened in the last few years with the Macomb County Election Office?
I can tell you
Elections?
what I know.
What you know.
And there's a lot of stuff I don't know. So I already kind of highlighted what happened when Mark, Lisa, Jackie Eubanks, and I went in to talk to Tony. And the only thing that I saw coming out of that was that Jackie Eubanks was the one under investigation by the FBI, which stinks to high heavens to me. So also, you probably heard that there was a forensic audit performed in the wake of the 2020 election. Yeah, it's not a forensic audit because they never used a write blocker on it. They brought in, and if you don't have a write blocker when you're taking an image of the machine, it means that you could be implanting illicit code or changing data when you go off and plug it into the computer. So it's not a forensic audit in the, by any stretch of the imagination. The one guy that they had that was worth his salt that they could have had looking into that at the time was a guy by the name of Ben Cotton. He is like the world, I mean, from my perspective, he's like the biggest straight shooter, smart guy, brilliant, cybersecurity expert. He wasn't allowed to look at the machines at all. He was a spectator the whole time. He was brought in to be a show pony, is what it comes down to, and that doesn't sit well with me. That report, by the way, there was a public report that was posted up on the Macomb website, and it was there in one place for a couple of years, and then it got moved, so I was confused. I thought it was taken down, but it was just moved to a different place on the website. So there's a public report, executive summary, that was prepared by ProV&V, which is one of the two, what they call VSTLs, or voting system test labs, that are allowed to look at the machines. In other words, they're part of they're the insiders that we're supposed to trust. They were the ones that didn't use the write block, so they didn't do a forensic audit. And they said that there's nothing to see here in the public report. Well, the public report on page 7 of it references something called the detailed technical report. I wanted to see that detailed technical report. And I submitted a FOIA request for that. And Tony Ferlini, when he was talking about running for Secretary of State, called me up and we started talking. I said, Tony, I don't want to talk about that at all until I see a copy of that detailed technical report, and you can get it to me. And he said, no, it doesn't exist. And I go, what do you mean it doesn't exist? It's referenced on page 7 of your report. He goes, no, it doesn't exist. A couple weeks later, I got a rejection to my FOIA request saying that due to security concerns, mind you, 5 years after the election, due to security concerns, can't allow you to go off and read that. And then I found out that the Macomb County Clerk's Office had approached Jocelyn Benson for advice in the wake of the audit on how to prevent the distribution of technical data from this audit report to the general public. So he actually did premeditated FOIA obstruction. And the same guidelines that he got back, and by the way, the guidelines he got back were not from Jocelyn Benson. They were actually from ES&S. So he took legal direction from the vendor that was being called into question for integrity of their systems, and used their rationale as a basis for denying my FOIA request. So that technical report is out there, but I don't have access to it.
A follow-up question? It's not on? Well, this is for the live stream. This is for the live stream.
The name for the, I'm going to call it the second forensic
Yeah, the
audit,
detailed
if
tech-
that was ever done, if the second
Oh,
audit.
no, it was one audit, but there were two versions of the
two names.
reports. One was like the public executive summary version. The other was the detailed report that actually had the substantive settings and configurations that they were looking at. And here's the issue. If it was an issue 5 years after the election to go off and see that detailed technical audit report because they said it compromises security, I would counter, and I am countering with the fact that if you haven't changed your security settings in 5 years, that's a security concern, not letting people go off and look at the detailed technical report. So I have a little bit of a problem there. And frankly, because this gets into the heart of the Secretary of State race, I was sitting on the sidelines on all this until I saw Tony Ferlini on an interview with Fox 2 News saying that he had conducted this forensic report and he's done everything to secure our elections. And I knew what had happened in the past with what happened with Jackie Eubanks. I mean, Mark and Lisa, and I was very frustrated by that at the time. But I was willing to give him a pass on the fact that he did call for an investigation at least into this, and that it was progress. But unfortunately, that was a case of the more I dug into it, the less I liked it. And instead of actually giving me more confidence, it actually gave me less confidence, and that's where I finally said, that did it. I've been watching all these candidates for a while, and that's why I endorsed Monica Yatuma for Secretary of State. So, and I've interviewed them all. I've talked to them all, and there's one that's heads and tails above the rest. And I don't think it's an exaggeration here. I think once Monica gets into the Secretary of State, she's going to be one of the best Secretaries of State this state has ever had. So.
Next question.
I have something to add to that.
Yeah.
He did a live stream. There was a live stream, and he had something where he signed a petition, and at this petition meeting or whatever, he's like, he had the paperwork to disregard whatever you were accusing him of. He goes,
Yeah.
here's the papers, I have them, they're
Yeah.
on my website. And I question, I go, what was that? I don't understand. I mean, because I don't want any lies.
Yeah.
I don't want anything, no cover-ups. I'm very legit. What was it that he said that he finally had something that he showed all of his people?
Yeah. That's the question I had. I said, well, just post it online then.
He said he had something from the sheriff's department.
Let's see it. Has anybody
Confirming-
seen it? Because that's what all I've been asking. I said, show me it.
Confirming that what you said was a lie and what he said was the truth. It
Yep.
was from the sheriff's department. They're
Yeah.
all over there, Macomb
I
County.
would
Circle
love
of
to
Trust.
see it, and I would be the first one to
So
issue a
he hasn't
retraction
put
if
it
anything
on-
I said was a lie.
He hasn't put it on the website or anything?
I haven't seen it.
Did you look for it?
No, which website? I went to Tony Ferlini's campaign website. I didn't see it there. We could
I'm
probably
just
pull it
saying
up on the TV here. You want to
it's
go
like
off and
he
look?
said it was there.
I know. He's been
So,
wandering around with
I
these
don't-
papers,
Let's
fluffing
not have
around.
any lies. Is it there or isn't it there?
I haven't seen anything. And if somebody has it, I mean, my email address is patrick@letsfixstuff.org. Send it to me, and I will let everybody know. And by the way, he's saying I said things that I haven't said. So just because he says I said it doesn't mean I actually said it. I'm trying to be as disciplined as I can about what I observed, and when I observe something, I provide the information in support of my assertion. So for example, when I say he did premeditated FOIA obstruction, well, I show the letter, the email that he sent out to him that asking, and I got the response, so you see what's out there. The only thing I couldn't verify is when he told me that it was via a phone conversation when he said that detailed technical report didn't exist. So you either got to trust him or me, and I know for a fact I was pretty adamant about just show me the dang report, and he said it didn't exist.
And at the time of the
Okay, now,
Yeah.
never heard.
next question. No, you had your hand
Yeah,
up. We'll get to everybody, okay? So
I can't remember the woman's name, but the woman who was in jail in Michigan, I think you said, for 9 years, sentenced for.
No, that's in Mesa County, Colorado.
Okay, Mason, Colorado.
Yeah, Tina Peters.
But then there was somebody else who got prosecuted.
Yeah, she's.
So my question is, do either of them have the opportunity to appeal further up? And secondly, we see all these, protests and stuff on the other side.
Yeah.
Why, like the J6ers, you've seen those people out there every night, God bless them. And what, they're out there fighting for those people that were, criminally detained. And why do you think it is the American people don't do the same thing? I know we all work and we don't get paid to protest, but
Yeah.
where is that courage and that drive that's missing? Like, why is it missing from our population to go stand out there and say, we want justice for this woman. This is wrong. We, look at all the evidence.
Well, I think a lot of what's going on right now is, to your point, people don't know who to trust, and they don't know what the truth is, and I may not always be right, but I'll tell you, I show my receipts. So if I read the receipts wrong, you can correct me on it. But I'm pretty confident about what I've attested to, that it's 100% truth. So a lot of people don't know who to trust. And literally, this goes back to biblical times and Pontius Pilate saying, what is truth, right? That's what we're dealing with right now, and they're doing this deliberately. They want to create chaos. I've seen whistleblower videos from pre-2020 where these leftists, these anarchists, are planning the real insurrection that happened on November 3rd, 2020, and January 6th, which is what they were doing to go off and plant a real insurrection. And their goal in these whistleblower videos, which were given to the FBI prior to the 2020 election, by the way, it shows how they were actively calling for creating social crisis. They wanted chaos. And the exact words from Lisa Fithian on this, who was one of the organizers, who, by the way, was also one of the organizers of the riots and protests during Right to Work in 2012 in Michigan, in the Capitol. So I actually may have rubbed shoulders with her in the hallway there. They said that chaos is the soup by which change happens. Let's get cooking. They are deliberately, this is evil. I mean, this is like Saul Alinsky, who dedicated his book to Lucifer, the first radical, he calls him. That's who we're dealing with, ultimately. And so if you're wondering why people aren't up in arms on it, I think, we gotta know, right? Yeah, that's why I'm still at this for this long. I don't want to be doing this.
Okay, next question. Who? Fred? Yeah, we'll get to everybody. And you're next.
I don't need that. Where's Peter Lucido during all this stuff? Where'd he disappear to? Why doesn't he take the ball and run with this?
Have you asked him?
Why?
Because that's one of the things that's most frustrating with me. I saw we had a Republican clerk from the legislature in Tony Ferlini. We had a Republican prosecutor with Pete Lucido. Pete Lucido was on the Senate Oversight Committee where John Polis, a Dominion CEO, was testifying. I was texting Pete during that saying, he's lying, he's lying, he's lying, he's lying. And to Pete's credit, he asked a question around internet connections during or whatever, but ultimately, I think he was convinced that the path of least resistance is not to make a big deal out of it. So, I mean, just look at some of the people that are supporting Tony right now. I mean, they don't believe, here's a big rub with what's going on here, is that they don't believe that the 2020 election was stolen. They don't believe there's any problems with the machines, even though we provided crap loads of evidence that at least merit an investigation. And so they're just taking the path of least resistance. It's very frustrating for me. Yeah.
Okay, next question.
It was frustrating.
Next question.
Heck, Ed McBroom was my Bible study lead in the Senate, and he just.
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
First of all, after 5 years, Mr. Forlini trying to rewrite history. what happened 2020, 2021, and you know very well, and all those so-called forensic audit. He was forced, thanks to Jackie and many of us who protested for more than 2 weeks in the front of his office. Finally, he decided to do the so-called forensic audit, like you mentioned. I had to add something to this, because in the end, some of us demand to have chance to talk to the observer were hired from, I think, Trump organization.
Yeah.
The guy who were looking at this forensic audit. And what Forlini actually, someone close to Forlini said that, oh, sorry, the guys signed NDA. They have no access to so-called observer of the so-called forensic audit.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Ben Cotton.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, it was literally, he was a show pony.
would you tell me what do you think about the new ownership of the Dominion? Because some people have high hopes. New Dominion's a conservative guy, and now it seems to me it will be even worse because Dominion plus guy who controls software, some software, right?
Yeah, let me go through the history of these voting system software, and that's another reason to read that book, Stolen Elections. It all started with Smartmatic, and it was actually designed by the Venezuelan government, according to all these whistleblowers, to actually steal elections. So this is a narco-terrorism state. These are cartels. It's called the Cartel de los Sols. And they decided to branch out from their core business lines of human trafficking and drug trafficking into electioneering. And they figured it was a lot cheaper for folks to take over these democratic countries by stealing the elections than it was to go off and launch a military coup. And it was a lot easier because then you could pacify the populace a lot easier as well. And so Smartmatic was actually funded by the Venezuelan government. There's evidence in support of the fact that they have a 28% share stake in it. The source code's actually stored out in CNES. Hopefully some of our special operators that were visiting with Nicolas Maduro in Caracas took a side trip over to this facility to pick up some of the source code, but we'll see. And so that came over. So the Smartmatic went in and tried to buy a US company, Sequoia, and people took issue with that with CFIUS, which is foreign investments, and they were actually taking, we had a foreign company owning a significant stake in a company in the US that was managing the elections for the US. So they said, no, you can't do that. You have to sell it. Guess who ended up buying those assets? It was Dominion. And so the Dominion bone is connected back to the Smartmatic bone. And then this gentleman who bought Dominion through a company called No Inc. They say that he's Republican because he was representing Republican canvassers in St. Louis, Missouri at the time. I haven't seen any evidence that he's a Republican or he's considered election integrity advocate. But we have all these vulnerabilities, all these concerns with the Dominion voting systems. Within a month of him purchasing Dominion, he applied for certification status with the Election Assistance Commission. That is not enough time to go off and redesign any of those systems. That is not enough time to redefine a supply chain where 48% of the components for the Dominion ImageCast precinct came from communist China. So it's telling me that they're just trying to put lipstick on a pig.
One more question related to the Secretary of State races. How important?
Yeah.
Probably you know more, because we find out that people were actually put in this position, the Secretary of State in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Philadelphia, now running for governor office.
Yeah.
The
funny how that works.
same people who helped stall election now want to be governor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called the Katie Hobbs plan. Yeah, exactly. And it's frustrating because, I mean, obviously Jocelyn Benson's running for governor here. Katie Hobbs in Arizona ran the election that she got elected governor from. So it stinks to high heaven. And but that's why we got our work cut out for us. You're spot on with everything you're talking about. And by the way, I want to reiterate again, if any of these papers that Tony Ferlini is flapping around saying they prove I'm a liar on any of this stuff, I'd love to see them. Just please share them with me. And like I said, if they disprove anything that I've been saying, then I will issue an apology from the top of the mountaintop. No problem.
Next question.
Department of Justice, under the Trump executive order, is suing several states. In Michigan, Benson declares that the qualified voter file is off limits for the federal government. So I understand separation of state and federal government, but there is an oversight that is involving the quality of care. Can you go into that quality of care and how we learn the corruption if we get the entire qualified voter file?
Well, the key element of the qualified voter file of interest is, as we were talking about earlier, the voter history. That's it. Because if we do that, we have the list of all the people they said who voted in the 2020 election, and then we correlate it with the data that the Doge team got with all those Social Security numbers coming from, and the ballots coming from China, and the driver's licenses coming from China and all that, and we find out that they're all connected. We busted them on not only election fraud, but on RICO. And so that's why they don't want to give this up. So I get it. The Social Security numbers are important. That's one of the key pieces of data they're asking for because it ties back to the data that the Doge team dug up. They're the same thing with the driver's licenses. It ties back to the investigation revealing all the Chinese drivers. So that's why these guys don't want to give it up. But ultimately, I'd even give up those 2 data points for the voter history data. Of course, I don't want to negotiate for any of it. It's all our data. We should be able to see all of it.
Next question.
Okay, how can we hold our local municipal clerks? Because Michael Butts attended every municipality.
Yeah.
And I was on the board. Was a trustee at the time and the treasurer, now in Armada. And I had an election in 2016. I ran for clerk, lost by 17 absentee ballots. The deputy clerk had broken the seal and added 8 ballots. I could not do a recount, even though I had
Because the
asked.
seal was
But
broken.
what is happening is our state, just like with the poll challengers, with recall elections, they're making it impossible to get the crooks out.
You hit the nail on the head, and I've come to the conclusion. I mean, there's a lot of stuff now I wish I would have known back when I was in the Michigan Senate, right? I was sitting on judiciary, and if I would have known what I know now back then, it would have been different. The good news is we got some good people in the House that are listening, and they're taking some actions now. But the bottom line is the system right now is rigged, so you can't get accountability.
Right.
Here's the deal, right? So let's take the example of the suits in Detroit that happened. They say, no, we didn't have any credible evidence to go off and introduce in there. Well, how do you get credible evidence? I mean, you issue FOIA requests. Well, what happens when you issue a FOIA request? It took them 9 months to provide me with the list of people who voted in the 2020 election. And what, $5,000 or something like that as well on it. And they just slow walk it. And in order to issue a lawsuit that's seeking a writ of quo warranto, which essentially says, show me proof that you were elected, you have to issue that within 30 days of the election. So 9 months versus 30 days, what do you think?
Yep.
They've already rigged the dang thing,
Yes.
and that is, they know what they're doing. And that's why, ultimately, for me, there's a one-word solution to all of our election woes, and that's transparency.
Yes.
So-
my last question, though, is I see that you support Monica Utuma.
Yeah.
And I did go to that forum a couple weeks ago between her and
Yeah.
Amanda Love. And the one thing that I walked away, because I thought, I'm going to walk away from here and know exactly who I'm going to support. I didn't.
Yeah.
And both of them, people in this room have got to wake up. The difference between a rhino and a Democrat is nothing. They are this one and the same. And we need people who are going to be willing to say that, because neither of them would say it.
Yeah.
And Tony Ferlini is,
POS.
he just, yeah, there's no difference. And everybody needs to understand that.
Yeah,
We know that.
Next question?
The term voting machine, sorry if this is rudimentary,
Yeah.
but a tabulator, when I worked at a precinct last election,
yeah.
they would go into what they were calling a tabulator. Is that a voting machine, what has been called a
Part of
tabulator?
it, I actually, if you really want to go back into brass tacks on it, certification occurs for an electronic voting system. That system contains a suite of components. The tabulator is one part of it. The monitor is a part of it. The managed switches are parts of it. In some cases, printers, whatever. You got to go back to what was actually certified, and you're getting to a really important question, because we never test the end-to-end system configuration that's actually certified by the Election Assistance Commission. So, as a matter of fact, we don't even do logic and accuracy tests either. But that's another story. But it gets to the heart of, my background is I helped design critical systems on board the International Space Station, so life support system. They were treated as critical infrastructure, just like our election systems are supposed to be treated. And there's a whole discipline that goes into that, from requirements perspective, then from a design perspective, you go off and do some analyses, make sure that all your failure modes fail in a safe manner, and then you go into configuration management to make sure that the system that you tested is actually the system that's deployed, and that there's nobody that's able to modify the configuration of that equipment. We don't do any of that. And to the extent that it's done, it's all done by third parties that we have no oversight or transparency into whether or not they're doing it or not. So to really go off and get to the heart of your question, you got to look at the whole system, not just the tabulator, because anything that tabulator touches, including the stupid little flash drives that can have their own little programmable code inserted into them as soon as you plug them in, all that is part of that quote-unquote system that has to be evaluated. We do not have the discipline or rigor, and I put out a paper that's up on the electioncrimebureau.com website. It's about 55 pages or whatever, that attempts to rebut an assertion made by Donald Palmer, who's the chair of the Election Assistance Commission. He effectively gave a false sense of security around these electronic voting systems, and I went through item by item by item in a professional and I think polite manner, but I said, you're selling us a bad bill of goods. Here's trying to give people peace of mind about these systems because they're not secure. And his caveat at the end was, you just give us enough money and we'll do whatever you need us to do. And it's like, no, we're throwing, then we're getting into throwing good money after bad. We put in billions of dollars in these systems. We need to go back to hand counting and paper ballots. So, and I love technology. I am not a Luddite. I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. I like IT. I love technology, but I've seen the way it's implemented in this state, and they take advantage of these trust walls that we can't get behind to go off and play games with the stuff, and that's a non-starter for me. You got to be transparent.
Next question?
Thank you. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Tim.
So this lady brought up a very good point where ballots were inserted after the election.
Yeah.
So hand counting paper ballots also can have some potential flaws because of those kinds of issues.
Yep.
I want to talk about the 2026 election.
Okay.
And there's we're all on the same page. Ballot machines and tabulators, we can't trust them.
Well.
Hand count can help validate that information, but if we turn on the ballot image creation, all right, there's a lot of intel.
I'm smiling because we had a discussion on this before.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Well, I want to get your
Yeah, I know.
perspective on that, and the key thing is there's a lot of intel that you can pull from digital images. You could tell if ballots were copied. You can tell if the tabulators inserted common hand markings on them. You know, there's a lot of intel that you could pull from digital images. There's metadata that would give you the timestamp of when that image was created. So the reason why this is so important is because Anthony Fellini is campaigning on the fact that he collected all the ballot images from the 2024 election. So we FOIA'd for those, and he would not give us the source data. So we were not able to validate.
In other words, he only got a copy of the images. He didn't get the original images with the metadata.
Yeah, what we got were low-resolution PDF copies, and we know they were copies because of the TIFF files, because of the timestamps on the PDFs. When you are creating 1,500 PDFs per minute, that's the computer mass copying from the source data to create the PDFs. So when you get into the digital area, there's a lot of intel that you can figure out, and that's why he doesn't want us to have the source data. I want to get your thoughts on the 2026 election. If we can get all the clerks statewide in Michigan to actually produce digital images and give us the source data, that would be another source of validation. What are your thoughts?
Well, first,
Apologize for the long question.
anytime they delete ballot images, if they don't have those ballot images, you're in violation of federal law, because under United States Code, Title 52, Section 20701, all election records are supposed to be preserved for 22 months. So every time Benson issues those directives to scrub that, she's violating the law. And but first, I want to point out one thing on the hand counts. All right, before we get to the digital ballots, the hand counts. Yeah, they've been stealing elections since they were banging rocks together to make fire, right? So the key thing is how many variables are you introducing into the equation to go off and serve as attack vectors for them. And I would submit you're decreasing the number of attack vectors when you do a hand count versus an electronic, because number one, I can't inspect any of the machines. That is a big black box, and that is a big non-starter for me right there. I can inspect everything that is physical associated with the hand count. I can live stream, just like we're doing now, with the hand count, and I can have people watching this from the villages in Florida and being outsourced as my overseers, and they can cry foul when they see something wrong with a count or something. I can't do that with the electronic voting systems. On the whole digital ballot image integrity issue, I'm very scarred by, probably, if you want to trace it all the way back, how many of you guys remember Mad Magazine? All right, remember Spy versus Spy? That's what I get into when it comes into the digital ballot. I already know that J. Alex Halderman, a professor at University of Michigan that teaches, talks all about these electronic voting systems. He had two students doing a demonstration at one of the DEF CONs, recent DEF CONs, where all the hackers go off and destroy these machines, right? And they were able to modify ballot images and ballot metadata and everything else on the fly as the ballots were being scanned in. So I don't trust anything electronic. And I wish I could, I get it, but I don't trust them, because anytime you come up with something that's even better, then Spy versus Spy, the other guy is going to come in and find something that unspoofs what you just spoofed, or whatever the case may be. So I don't trust it. So is it incremental to have the ballot image data? Is that incrementally better? Yes, no doubt about it. Anytime you have more information on something, more transparency, I get a warm and fuzzy. But is it worth the effort to go off and pursue that, as opposed to just going back to hand counts of paper ballot? I would submit no.
Next question. Is there another question?
It's my understanding that the flash drives for the tabulators and the poll books and all that, they're supposed to be certified, correct?
It's all part of the system.
Right. Who certifies them? Who
There's only-
actually are the people that goes through them, certifies, and
There's
makes
only
sure they're not corrupted?
Two, what they call VSTL businesses or companies in the United States, and that is ProV&V and SLI. ProV&V was the company that Tony Ferlini brought in to do his forensic audit, and just to show you the level of expertise they had, they didn't take a forensic image of the drive with a write block on the drive, so that's not a forensic audit. Well, that was, yeah, there was a window where they didn't have their license when they were doing certification activities. But even then, that's kind of a paper chase a little bit, but it's still, the fact that we've got this cottage industry of circle of trust for certifying flash drives, full of voting systems, everything, it just stinks to high heaven. It really does. I mean, when you've got a former senior vice president with Dominion, Jessica Bowers, actually responsible for overseeing the testing and certification activities, it's kind of like the FDA with their captive. It's a captive agency where all the pharmaceuticals are funding the FDA trials, right? So it's the same thing that's going on inside the EAC. And so I've submitted requests up to the folks up in DC to or change the mission of the Election Assistance Commission to focus on defining pre- and post-election audit standards and get out of the subsidizing of the electronic voting systems business and let the states absorb the whole cost on these systems. If they're saying that they're secure, then let them absorb all the costs associated with certifying that. So yeah, you can't trust any of it right now, unfortunately. And I recommend reading that paper that I did. That gets to the heart of what we can or can't trust in that system. It's electioncrimebureau.com.
Next question.
It's not so much a question, but a statement. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the House Oversight Committee is having a hearing on voter roll maintenance, and Ann Bolin will be talking about that. Also, on February 18th, the EAC is having an audit comment or issue. Both will be live streamed. They would be very interesting to watch. Michigan Fair Elections Institute is posting some comments to the audits using our HAVA complaint as showing the shortfalls of the audit process that the EAC currently has in place. One thing, the EAC is not a big organization. There are 28 people total, including the 4 commissioners. So they have a very limited budget. DOJ came in and hit them pretty hard, but they do outsource most of their audits. So with that, I just wanted to put that public service announcement out there.
Thank you. Question?
In the absentee ballot, I forget the precincts, where they have the absentee ballots.
Yeah.
The 2 people that are the adjudicators, there's always 2 adjudicators, right?
Supposed to be, yeah.
Yes, and there's supposed to be 1 from each side.
Yeah.
They are, as I
We'll go with
understand it, the Secretary of State issues a certain number ballot series for them to use for any adjudications, and they have to document it meticulously. I worked it for 8 years.
Yeah,
This is the reason why I'm asking. And they have to document everything meticulously, and they, at the end of the evening, when all ballots have been ran through, then they are supposed to put the adjudicated ballots and everything in a sealed bag, put that little gold seal on with their signature saying,
Yep.
I verify that these things are accurate. They don't answer to the supervisors, they answer only to the clerk.
Yeah.
Okay? In one incident, when the last time I worked the election, the adjudicators were sent home. And I wasn't an adjudicator that time.
Yeah.
And I approached the clerk's assistant and I said, excuse me, why are the adjudicators leaving when you're still running ballots? And he said, oh, well, those are fine. It's with that new machine. It does them, 3 stacks at a time. Yeah, I go, I don't care. As long as you're running ballots, they're supposed to be here. And I kind of got brushed off, and I go, and also, why are there blank adjudication ballots sitting on the table? They're supposed to be sent back. Any that you didn't use are supposed to be sent back with the ones you sealed up to show the Secretary of State, okay, these are the ones we sent for adjudication use. These are the ones that were used, all documented. These are the ones unused.
Yeah.
They were still sitting out.
What jurisdiction?
Shelby Township. And if you guys remember Melissa Carone,
Yeah.
she was actually a poll watcher there. And what happened was when she left, because there was also late entry of that precinct's votes, very late, and so I had contacted her and said, this is happening because they shooed us out. They made us all leave. And I said,
Did they claim a water main break or anything like that?
No, they
or
just said they didn't need us because they were just there are 3 people. His 3 people were finishing running them through their new machine because we weren't using the old-fashioned tabulators.
Yeah.
And so she brought this up, and then I can't get into too much detail. But eventually what ended up happening is she ended up basically apologizing and saying that she was misinformed. Yes. So I was there.
Yeah.
I asked the questions. I didn't get any. Is that okay the way they did that? I'm just saying, I just know what I always did for 8 years as an adjudicator and then what I observed.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel I got appropriate answers to my questions. I would just still like appropriate answers to those questions. Maybe it was the new laws that Benson put in that, hey, you can just...
No, because under the old laws, I didn't get appropriate answers to my questions at the Detroit AV Accounting Board either as a poll challenger. So that's just one set of examples. And the good thing is you knew what the procedures were, right?
That goes in the chain. There's another...
Right. This is... Which is why I think there's a huge opportunity for the EAC to define pre-election, post-election audit standards. And when you go into a full-up audit mindset, this is where Benton would be caught with her hands in the cookie jar before the election, is if you did a pre-election audit, like a book audit, and say, okay, here's all your procedures. Let's go off and look at every line item in your procedures against all the Michigan statutes. Are you compliant with Michigan statutes? And if you are, then you get to proceed to the election. If you aren't, fix your processes until you are compliant. Instead, what we get is Benson says, well, if you don't like it, I'm only going to follow the laws that I agree with, and if you don't like that, we're going to sue, you can just sue me.
Because all the judges are
Right, and we've seen that, right? Michigan, our judiciary, there's, with some notable exceptions, is compromised.
Who has the power to
Next.
Arrest who?
Benson or whoever's not following the laws? Who has the power to arrest these people? Like how Trump got arrested and all the Republicans get arrested?
When we talk about criminal prosecutions, which is where we get into arrests, you have to have a prosecutor. You have to have, and so, that's why it was disappointing what happened here in Macomb County, because we had a prosecutor. I thought if the, yeah, Nessel can do it for us. I'm sure she'd be right on it.
Next question.
Yeah, it comes down to, and by the way, this is something, even though I served 8 years in the Michigan Senate, I had to start learning the judicial system. I've learned more, frankly, in the last 5 years than I did during 8 years in the Michigan Senate. And I was on judiciary. Well, Pete has the opportunity to convene grand juries. He has the to launch investigations. Grand jury can issue an indictment, and indictments can lead to arrest. So law enforcement, if they have probable cause, they can arrest somebody for when they observe something that occurs in front of them. But then if you're going to hold them, you gotta have all the evidence to back it up at the time. So a lot of this stuff, frankly, you got to be a PhD in elections to have all the evidence in front of you. It's not. It's tough to have the full scope right in front of you as an observation or observing it. So it's law enforcement and prosecutors as.
So Macomb County has the power to arrest somebody at that level, at the state level?
I believe. I mean, all I know is prosecutors can and law enforcement can. I don't know about jurisdictions, about a state. Yeah, I'm assuming that they have to do something bad in that jurisdiction in order for them to have the authority to arrest them in that jurisdiction, but I don't know.
Next.
Yes, feds can do it. That's why everything I've been doing for the last few years has been focused on our friends in the federal government. I've given up on Nestle and the Judicial Tenure Commission, the Attorney Grievance Commission. It's literally, it's a criminal syndicate. It really is.
Okay. Next question.
I ask this with bated breath for listening to this. What is the plan for our 2026 election here in Michigan? How are we going to
The only thing
get around this and get a voice?
You got to make it too big a rig. You got to get people out there. There's some good things happening in the background in regards to illegals being, effectively taken out of the country. But is that enough? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, here's my big concern. Everybody focuses on cleaning the voter rolls. We clean the voter rolls. And then the day before the election, Jocelyn Benson comes in and backs up the dump truck with a bunch of corrupt voter rolls. They get ballots and they vote, and it's the same garbage we've been in for every single year. So it's frustrating. I mean, we got to, from my perspective, I want to have at least a few people in orange jumpsuits before the 2026 election, because until that happens, they're going to keep on doing what they're doing with impunity. And so, and having said that, I am confident that the wheels are in motion for that. The problem is we still got to overcome some corruption in the judiciary.
Next question.
Not all of them are bad. There's some good. Justice Brian Zara, God bless his soul, he's got to deal with that every single day up there with those cronies, and
I think it'll be good last question.
Okay.
Because the lady talked about rhinos, real conservative, and who will vote for Secretary of State.
Yeah.
So please remind us Donald Trump 5-point election integrity plan, because we have discussion and including you.
Yeah.
And so we most of us, we know who's worthy to vote for Secretary of State, for me or two ladies.
Yeah, well, obviously I endorsed Monica Utuma.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Please tell us Donald Trump election integrity plan. Get 5 points.
So his overall election, first of all, I want to highlight he nailed the funding streams first and foremost. So when you take out the dollars, all these NGOs that are going off and paying people to do corrupt things, they end up having the spigot turned off. So that's the number one thing that he not only can do, but he has done to a large extent across the board. And frankly, just the fact that he brought attention to it is kudos. And I won't, without getting into too many details, suffice to say, I provided an actual playbook to a certain individual in DC that actually outlined all the steps that I think need to be taken, and about half of them have been taken. And to be frank, I don't want to air all those on a live stream right now because some of them I don't want them to know. But ultimately, it comes down to transparency. And so these funding streams, when you boil it down by cutting these funding streams off, once we knew that they were doing it, they were hiding all this garbage. It was transparency that unearthed it. When it comes to the voter rolls, it's transparency that's going to solve that. So the idea of, frankly, Tim's work and Fani Mantravati with checkmyvote.org, extremely valuable activities. Emphasize and use their information as much as possible. Ultimately, Donald Trump's big goal, what he needs to be going off and doing, is to encourage Pam Bondi to move things along and get people prosecuted. I think a step that from what I've heard in the back rooms, one of the big blocks to moving forward on some key election integrity initiatives has been a gentleman by the name of Todd Blanche, who's the Assistant Attorney General inside the White House. And I understand Pam Bondi still lives most of the time out in Florida, so she's not day-to-day. So Todd Blanche is the day-to-day guy, and he's been blocking the appointment of an Assistant Attorney General for election integrity that would report directly to Donald Trump. So here's one other key thing that is very important that I learned after I put the playbook up to D.C. If you, and it's really insidious how this came to being in the first place, but the Department of Justice has procedures for every different type of criminal prosecution that they go through. And on election integrity, they created a manual on how to enforce, how to prosecute for election fraud. And in that, they set it up so that there's one organization in the federal government that determines whether or not investigations from the FBI can proceed on elections and whether or not grand juries can be called, and it's called the Office of Public Integrity. And the person who set up those procedures is a gentleman by the name of Jack Smith. So, and notably, that position is still filled by a gentleman by the name of Ed Sullivan, and we do not have a Trump appointee in that position right now. So you've probably seen that all the forward momentum is coming out of the Civil Rights Division with Harmeet Dillon. That is the one area that, if you want, start applying pressure to appoint somebody like Ed Martin to the Office of Public Integrity. And when that happens, I think we're going to start seeing a lot faster movement towards those orange jumpsuits. So that would be a key part of the plan for me. A lot of the other stuff dealt with funding. Obviously, we got to pass the SAVE Act. And so if we pass the SAVE Act and you get rid of mail-in voting, that is huge. I mean, I highlighted this in my book. It's 90% of the fraud in 2020 was through mail-in voting. It's a third-party process. It's all hidden. There's a huge amount of trust that goes into it. In-person voting, you get rid of all those variables, a lot of those variables, and that's when the voter ID actually matters. So pushing for the passage of the SAVE Act is critical.
Is there?
I know. I've been talking with Sydney. She's been up. She was up in D.C. last week. Yeah. So we'll see. There's internal politics there, just like in our. It's the stuff. It's so disheartening sometimes when you see the garbage that's going on up there. But yeah.
Next question. Is there, just one second, is there a new question someone hasn't asked any? Do you have a question? I'll get to you.
Pat, I just want to ask, and this might not be related to all this, but when's President Trump going to pardon Tina Peters?
He already did.
Oh, he did?
But the issue is,
Why is she getting out of jail?
yeah, he can pardon for federal, and frankly, there's a case to be made that he shouldn't have pardoned her because she didn't do anything wrong. And when you pardon somebody, it's kind of like a mission. So she didn't do anything wrong, but it's the state government. It's Governor Jared Polis that has the authority to pardon her. There still is a push to have her protected under federal whistleblower, which would get her out of jail on bond, and so which would be an improvement as her appeal goes through. So that is a big push. But I'll tell you, what's happening to her just breaks your heart. I just, yeah, that's when you know what you're dealing with is really evil. I mean, yeah. And they're attacking her while she's in prison. There's another, I mean, she's 80 years old. I mean, or 70 years old.
Trump has created a new position, Assistant Attorney General of National Fraud Enforcement.
Yes.
And that's being blocked in the Senate, or it's not moving forward for technical reasons?
No, I think that actually was, I think the skids are greased for that.
Okay, so
And that's focused in on the money laundering.
is that going to be the workaround that he needs to get it
Potentially,
past? Yes.
it could be. Right now, just so you know, where I've been told to feed all the data are the people out in Miami that are prosecuting the Smartmatic execs. So there's a grand jury formed in the Miami and Southern District of Florida, and there's a lot of indications that that's where we're going to get some good forward momentum from a criminal prosecution perspective.
All right, thank you for your time, Mr. Colbeck. Just real quick,
Yeah.
I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to elections.
Yeah.
So going back to 2020,
Yeah.
do you have a theory of the case of how, like Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, was coordinated? Is there a mastermind, puppet master? How did that happen? Because it's too coincidental.
Yeah, well, that's why my white whale is the Center for Internet Security. Because in order to have a coordinated operation, you need a war room. You need somewhere where all that information is being centralized. And the only place that I've seen that has centralized access to that data is the Center for Internet Security. They got a data center out in Greensboro, New York, I think it is, or the Greensville. I can't remember the exact name now. But and there's also indications that they have a data center out in Idaho. Somewhere in there, these guys are literally doing a wiretap of the election systems in all 50 states. And so whoever had access to that data is #1 on my most wanted list.
Unknown as of yet.
Unknown, yeah. I mean, I can't, for all I know, all these people that work at CIS are innocent as the wind-driven snow. But like I said before, what they've done is they've created a system where you have a single point of failure. You compromise that, and you have access to everything you need to know. And they are literally, do everybody know what I mean when I say man-in-the-middle attack? A man-in-the-middle attack is when you're transmitting data from point A to point B, but it gets intercepted by somebody at point C, and then they change the data before it goes to point B, and the point B people don't know that it was changed. Right. Yeah. That's what CIS is. They're point C. And they have access to all this data in decrypted fashion. I mean, I've got the actual TED Talks or whatever the equivalent of IT Talks with Amazon, all these guys, where they're bragging about their ability to look at this. I've got the contract with the Wayne County that talks about how they signed on the dotted line allowing the Center for Internet Security access to all their decrypted election records. So that's who I want to investigate. And I've heard anecdotally that during the 2024 election, they were shut down for a week by somebody or something. And so I'm hoping that means that somebody went in with a truck and loaded a bunch of servers into the back and is examining them now. I don't know, but I'm hoping that's what happened.
Any other questions?
In 2020, I was at Cobo Hall, and we got in for the military, the active military.
Yeah.
One of the envelopes.
You were one of our 12 poll challengers.
Yeah, we were independents. Yeah.
What did the pizza boxes look like from the inside?
I was like walking. I had no idea what to look for, and if I would have known now, every single ballot that I seen was for Biden, and they were all active military. They were born in the 40s, and I'm like, these are old people. So the one guy showed me the envelope of the lady. I wrote down her ballot number, everything. I did an affidavit on this.
Yeah.
It came from Ontario, Canada. Her envelope. That's, I mean, yeah.
So the reason I wasn't in there is because I was training people for the next batch of poll challengers what to look for. So you were already finding it. So
because it was like there was not one Trump ballot in that room.
Yeah.
Not one. And they were all old.
So just so you guys know what she's talking about, this is the day after the election, that morning. That's when they put the pizza boxes up on the wall, and they prohibited any new poll challengers from going into the room under phony COVID rules. Remember that, Judge Kenny? So they could have counted those military ballots all night long. All these counting boards were fully staffed the whole time. They were twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing at all. They chose the time when we had maybe a dozen Republican poll challengers to cover 134 AV counting boards to count these military ballots. And just remind everybody why it's important to have Republican poll challengers there, because what do they do with the military ballots, right? They take it from one format and they have to transpose it to one that the tabulator can read. So they have to, if you've got Trump derangement syndrome, to your point about what you saw on the ballots, what are the odds that when they see a Trump circle on one ballot, they're going to fill it on the next?
There was no Trump ballots. I mean, I took just to go through and look, there were no Trump ballots.
Yeah.
There was not one. And the people, a lot of the people the few of the people that were with me are the
Yeah.
ones that are calling you a liar and this and that. I'm like, but they've seen it all. They know that what you're saying is true. So I don't understand people and their logic and their fights, and
That's the most frustrating part about
it's
all this.
frustrating to
I
me
knew
too.
as soon as I went off and testified to what I had seen that I was going to get attacked, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, frankly, one of the reasons I was sitting on the sideline, and to the point of somebody else saying, why don't people stand up on it? It's because it's a whole bunch of hooey. I mean, it's a bunch of hassle for going off and testifying to it. But, when the spirit moves you, you got to say it, you got to testify to it. And
I did an affidavit, but nothing happened.
well, I'll tell you, I've collected all those affidavits. I've given them to the folks up in D.C. Department of Justice has 2 terabytes worth of this stuff, so it may not have had an impact at that point in time because we were going through all these state avenues, but the folks up at the federal government now have access to this data, and literally all this old data that we had that people said, oh, they just weren't paying attention or anything else, now people are paying attention. And so literally, you know what's getting the most views now on social media? It's something that was out 5 years ago from Jen Penrose about discovering this Telesystems modem sitting on the ES&S DS200 motherboard. We told everybody about that 5 years ago, and everybody said, no, nothing to see here is the most secure election in history. But persistence, right? And this is biblical too. Persistence, suffering gets to persistence, gets to character, gets to hope, and I'm hoping that we're going to see this all end with some folks in orange jumpsuits and get back. This is our 250th anniversary of our country, right? It would be very poetic for that to be the year that we take our country back. And I still want to reiterate this. If anybody sees those papers that Tony's shuffling around that prove that I'm a liar, please send it to me. If you can get it to Mark, he can get it to me, whatever. I'm very curious. Oh, good. Yeah, that'd be the first time.
So it's my understanding, I thought at this last election for the president, that Michigan was allowing ballots to come in from all over the world as a mail-in ballot without even having to prove that you are a citizen. How do we change that?
That's under UACAVA.
Procedure.
And UACAVA is the biggest farce right now in our election system. And UACAVA is for uniformed, overseas voters, something, civilian. Yeah, so these are for expat as well as military. Obviously, we want our military to vote, right? But the games that are played is that Jocelyn Benson set it up, and Jeff, you can probably go into more detail on it, but is that you don't even have to prove your residency here in the state of Michigan. So who knows how many times some of these expats are getting a pass to go off and vote. So Rosie O'Donnell from Ireland could go off and vote in Detroit with the security we have in. Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. I don't think she'd know how to fill in the blank. Huh? That's federal laws around UACAVA. By the way, you guys just rest assured, because I mean all that is under the watchful eyes of a company named Votum, who actually features technology from a company called Koenig, which if you guys are familiar with what Koenig is, it was the company that Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips identified as being connected to the Chinese Communist Party and was selling all of our data overseas. So no problem. They're the ones who are actually helping with the UACAVA process here for the military.
Next question, anybody?
Can't President Trump do something about that?
President Trump, by the way, I mean, if
Another
you go up on, once again, on the Election Crime Bureau website, on his first day in office, he issued about 8 or 9 executive orders that dealt indirectly or directly with election fraud. On March 25th of 2025, he put out Executive Order 14248 that has effectively served as the impetus for these DOJ lawsuits on HAVA that we're seeing. So he's been very active with what he can do. And I'll tell you, for all the guff, talk about people taking flack for doing the right thing. President Trump, everything that he's been doing, when he issues an executive order, he's not doing it as a king. He's citing the statute that gives him the authority. And he's essentially saying, guys, we haven't enforced this law for frickin' years. It's about time we went off and actually enforced it. And that's what he's calling out in these statutes. So he's getting a bad rap on this. And here's something, sorry, while we're on this is something very frustrating to me, because I'm seeing a lot of very good people right now being duped by these No Kings, anti-ICE protesting. They actually believe that they're protesting in the spirit of the old Schoolhouse Rock, No More Kings thing, and they think that they are being patriots and that the people that they're following are supporting the Constitution and the principles in the Declaration of Independence. They've duped them into this, into thinking that just because they hate Donald Trump, that they're the new patriots going into this. That is something we all got to work on, because they are being, they're Lenin's useful idiots right now. And that is so concerning. I've seen good people being duped by that just because they're listening to mainstream media, these little psyops known as fake news, and it's so frustrating.
It's dangerous when you see the majority of them young, white female, and age 16 to 26.
For what's that?
Minnesota,
Yeah.
Michigan.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
I'm going to put my tin hat on really quick here.
You want mine? 'Cause,
I've just noticed that over the years in education, we know they're being indoctrinated. We
Yeah.
need to keep fighting really hard against that. But in correlation with that, with all the push for technology in the schools as well, if you think about the age bracket, I look at these protesters, I look at these, people the ones you were just speaking of, the ones that think they're being patriotic.
No, it's not just the kids.
I know, but I'm going up to their 20s
Yeah.
and stuff. They actually in the schools take kids and teach them how to hack. It's all part of like technology, and they actually pull some kids and send them to special training when they show great
Beijing,
skill.
yeah.
No, they're doing that here.
No, I know. I'm just.
So, I mean, I just see this combined effort with the
is.
education system, and then you've got that age bracket, and they're the ones we see in the streets.
It's called the Grand Conspiracy, because all these, what seem to be separate threads, actually feed one another. And frankly, I was fighting this back when I was in the legislature. They were coming out with new social studies standards. I don't know if you remember that. I took a lot of heat on that, and I just said, whatever we come up with has to be politically neutral and accurate. And they ran hit pieces on me in the New York Times, Washington Post, all this kind of stuff, and just all fabricated lies. It's information, this information war element, and I forgot to mention that earlier, but that is a central, the fact that you guys are out here right now, you're already fighting that information war, so kudos to you. But guys, there's a lot of other people out there that are believing what they say on NBC, ABC, CBS, and all this crap, and it's so frustrating.
Pat, I have a question. Do you happen to know how many Republicans that Benson has on her board?
I mean, the State Board of Canvassers? Or what?
Benson
board?
Benson has her own advisory board.
Oh,
Do you happen to know how many Republicans are on that?
no, do you?
There's one.
There is?
His name's
Who?
Tony Forlini.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You should have just dropped the mic on that. We could all go home. It's kinda... Wow. Well, I know he was. This is a disappointing. We had. That. By the way, if you ever want to find out political affiliations of any NGOs that are out there, there's a great website called influencewatch.org. And so if you go out, and I've seen like Mike Bishop, former congressman, former Senate Majority Leader, he's part of this bipartisan group that tries to make the case that there's nothing wrong with our elections and all this kind of stuff. They're all funded with all these leftist organizations from folks like Piero Modayar and Alex Soros, George Soros, all these guys. This website, influencewatch.org, great. Anytime you hear a new organization, go there, check it out. You'll see their funding streams. Yeah, relatively. It's a good place to start. Do not use AI as a search tool, please. AI works well when you provide it with the evidence on it, and it'll reason and organize things. I used to use it for a partner that I used to work with. He used to send the most insane emails that I could never make heads or tails out of, and I would actually copy the email, dump it into AI, and say, what's he trying to say? So it's really good at that kind of stuff if you actually feed it with the data, but here's the key handicap on these AI models. They're all consensus-based. And the consensus is driven by this mainstream media, these folks that are pushing the information war on it. So just like any tool, use it judiciously. Do not sit there and give it an open-ended question because it'll give you a bunch of garbage.
We have time for one more question. Is there anybody with a question? Is there anybody afraid to use microphones? And of that group, I'm going to ask if anybody wanted to ask a question, but we're afraid to. No, I guess not.
This is not a fearsome group. I mean,
no, I know.
It's
But now, so Pat will be here for a little bit. He's got books back there, so please consider that. And I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Pat for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
We have
Mark for pulling it together. Thanks, Sheila.
Yes, we want to